The sun casts long golden streaks over the manicured lawns of Brookstone Estates, a gated community where everything looks picture-perfect on the surface. Behind the pristine sidewalks and neatly trimmed hedges, however, lies an unspoken tension, a quiet power struggle dictated by the iron grip of the Homeowners Association. I've only lived here for 6 months, but I've seen enough to know exactly how things work. My name is Daniel Carter, and I moved here after accepting a position as a government auditor, specializing in financial oversight and compliance for community organizations, including HOAs. But I haven't told anyone that yet. I wanted to observe first, get a feel for how things operate. Being one of the few Black homeowners in this neighborhood has been interesting. There's a certain way people look at me, polite smiles that don't quite reach their eyes. The way some of my neighbors hesitate before waving, as if deciding whether I belong. And then there's Margaret Kensington, the HOA president, an older white woman with a sharp bob, pressed khaki slacks, and an attitude that screams, "I own this neighborhood." Margaret hasn't spoken to me much, just passive-aggressive emails about ensuring my lawn adheres to community standards and keeping exterior decorations tasteful. I ignore most of it. My home is immaculate. But I can feel it. The pressure. The constant need to prove I belong. Still, I don't let it get to me. Most days, I enjoy my mornings sitting on the porch, sipping coffee while admiring the hedge wall surrounding my property. I paid good money for those hedges, tall, lush, and meticulously sculpted. They give me privacy from prying eyes, a small oasis in a place that sometimes feels suffocating. Then one morning something feels off. At first, I can't place it. The air feels different. Still, heavy. I step outside and stop cold. My hedges. They're gone. Not just trimmed, butchered. Hacked down to uneven, ragged stumps, the green leaves shredded and scattered like an act of violence. My jaw tightens as I step closer, my heart pounding. Who would do this?
Why?
A rustling sound draws my attention, and I spot John Matthews, one of the HOA board members, casually inspecting my property, clipboard in hand. His expression is completely neutral, as if nothing is wrong. I exhale slowly. "John." My voice is calm, but firm. "Did you do this?" He barely looks up. "Oh, good morning, Daniel. The HOA received multiple complaints about the height of your hedges. We determined they were a violation of community guidelines. So, we took care of it for you." I stare at him, barely believing what I'm hearing. Without notifying me? Without my permission? He shrugs. "It's all in the bylaws. You really should read them." Something twists in my gut. Not just anger, but understanding. This wasn't about guidelines. This was about control. About putting me in my place. They have no idea who they're messing with. I stand there, staring at the wreckage of my hedges, my fists clenching at my sides. The early morning breeze carries the scent of freshly cut greenery, but instead of feeling refreshing, it turns my stomach. John Matthews, clipboard still in hand, doesn't seem the least bit concerned. He's already moving on, glancing at his notes like I'm nothing more than an item on his checklist. "I didn't receive any notice about this," I say, my voice measured but tight. John barely looks up. "We sent an email." I pull out my phone. No emails. No letters. No warnings. Nothing. "Must have gone to your spam folder," he adds with a smirk, before walking off like this is just another Tuesday. That uneasy feeling in my gut tightens. This isn't just an oversight. It's deliberate. I take a slow breath, scanning my property. It's not just the hedges. The lawn has been disturbed too, the edges uneven where they carelessly cut into it. Even my flower beds have been trampled. This wasn't a routine HOA enforcement, it was an invasion. And I'm not the only one who noticed. Across the street, my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, watches from her porch, her lips pressed into a thin line. I catch her eye, and she hesitates before calling out softly. They did the same thing to the Changs last year. I walk over, lowering my voice. "The Changs? What happened?" She glances around before speaking, as if afraid someone might overhear. "They had a privacy fence. HOA claimed it was too high. No warning, just, she snaps her fingers, gone. They moved out a few months later. A sinking feeling washes over me. So, they just do this? Mrs. Patel nods, eyes dark with something that looks like regret. They pick people. Ones they think won't fight back. She gives me a look and I know exactly what she means. I turn back to my property, jaw tightening. I don't need full proof to know what's going on. The Brookstone Estates HOA isn't just about rules. It's about control. And Margaret Kensington, the queen of this little kingdom, decides who stays and who doesn't. As if summoned by my thoughts, Margaret herself appears, striding up the sidewalk with a smug confidence that makes my blood simmer. She stops in front of me, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Daniel," she says, voice syrupy sweet. "I see John already spoke with you. I do hope you understand. This is just about maintaining the aesthetic integrity of our community." I meet her gaze, searching for even the slightest hint of remorse. I find none. "You destroyed my property," I say flatly. "Without my consent." Margaret sighs, as if I'm being difficult. "You're new here. Adjusting can be challenging. But we have rules for a reason. If everyone did as they pleased, well, Brookstone wouldn't be the prestigious neighborhood it is, would it?" There it is. That tone. The same one I've heard 100 times. "You don't belong here." She pats my arm, condescending, dismissive. "I'm sure you'll come to appreciate how we do things." And just like that, she walks away. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. I don't waste time. The moment Margaret disappears down the sidewalk, I pull out my phone and start snapping pictures. Every angle, every severed hedge, every ruined flower bed. If the HOA thinks they can bulldoze my property without consequences, they're in for a surprise. I know their type. People like Margaret and John thrive on intimidation, on the assumption that people will just accept their authority without question. But what they don't know is that I'm not just some new homeowner. I audit organizations like theirs for a living, and I'm about to turn their world inside out. Pushing back. That afternoon, I dig through the HOA's bylaws. I downloaded them months ago, just to be prepared. Now I comb through every clause, every line. And then I find it, Article 4, Section 7. Property alterations. Any modifications to a homeowner's property, including landscaping changes, must be preceded by a written notice delivered via certified mail with a minimum 14-day response period. I never received a certified letter. I knew it. They broke their own rules. Armed with this, I fire off an email to the HOA board, citing the bylaw violation and demanding an immediate response. I CC Margaret, John, and the entire committee. Let's see them ignore this. But when I check my inbox later that night, my email has been deleted. Not bounced. Not unread. Deleted. I send another. Same result. I try calling the HOA office. Voicemail. I knock on John Matthews' door. No answer. They're stonewalling me. Doubling down. The next morning, I wake up to something even worse. A violation notice taped to my front door. Failure to adhere to HOA standards. $500 fine. I yank the paper off, my hands shaking with anger. They're not just ignoring me. They're retaliating. I storm down the street toward Margaret's house, ignoring the curious glances from neighbors. I don't even bother knocking. I pound on the door. A few seconds later, it swings open, and Margaret stands there, dressed in her signature pastel cardigan, holding a cup of tea like she has all the time in the world. "Oh, Daniel," she sighs. "There's no need for all this hostility." I hold up the notice. "You find me?" She barely glances at it. "We received more complaints." "Complaints about what?" I demand. She tilts her head. "Your property is becoming an eyesore, and we have a duty to ensure the neighborhood maintains its value." I step closer. "You mean you don't like seeing a successful black man owning a house in your little kingdom?" Her lips purse. Now. Let's not make this about race." I let out a bitter laugh. "You destroyed my hedges, deleted my emails, ignored your own bylaws, and now you're fining me? This is harassment." She takes a slow sip of her tea. "Daniel, dear, you're new here. And let's be honest, You're not exactly the typical homeowner in Brookstone Estates. There it is. The mask slips. The truth spills out.
She sees me as less than.
As someone she can push out just like she did to the Changs. I lean in, my voice steady. You're making a mistake. Margaret chuckles, shaking her head. I don't think so. You see, Daniel, we make the rules here. You can either fall in line or, well, maybe this neighborhood just isn't the right fit for you. She starts to close the door, but I stop it with my hand. Actually, Margaret, I say slowly, I think you'll find that I make the rules now. She frowns. Excuse me? I smile. I'm your new government auditor. And for the first time, Margaret Kensington looks afraid. Margaret blinks. For the first time since I moved here, she looks uncertain. But the moment is brief. She lets out a sharp laugh, the kind that's meant to make me feel small. Oh, Daniel, she sighs, shaking her head. You almost had me there. Government auditor? Please. I slide my hand into my pocket, pull out my official badge, and hold it up between us. Margaret's smirk vanishes. I'm not just a homeowner, I say evenly. I'm a state-appointed auditor for community associations. And as of last week, I've been assigned to review Brookstone Estates' financial records. Silence. For the first time, Margaret isn't the one in control. Her eyes flick to the badge, then to my face, then back again. She's scrambling, trying to process this new reality. Then, just as quickly, she doubles down. Well, she sniffs, that's very interesting, Daniel. But I failed to see how your job changes anything. The HOA has rules, and you, like everyone else, must follow them. I take a step forward. You're right, Margaret. There are rules. Like Article 4, Section 7 of the Brookstone Estates bylaws, which states that no property modifications can be made without written notice and a 14-day response period. Margaret's jaw tightens. You broke your own rules when you had my hedges destroyed. I continue. You violated Article 3, Section 2, when you imposed an unauthorized fine. And when you deleted my emails, you violated the state's homeowner transparency laws. Her face turns pale. Now she knows. I let the silence stretch, savoring the way she suddenly looks smaller. Then she squares her shoulders. You can't prove any of that. Wrong move. I pull out my phone, tap the screen, and hold it up. Security footage. Margaret's own landscapers hacking away at my hedges. The HOA's emails being marked as deleted by administrator. And the best part? A voice recording of John Matthews admitting they never sent me a notice. Margaret's mouth falls open. See, Margaret, I say, lowering the phone. I don't make accusations without proof. She glares, but I can see the panic creeping into her expression. This is ridiculous. You're not done. I cut her off, because as a government auditor, I also have access to financial records. And what I found, very interesting. I pull out another document, like this invoice from a landscaping company, paid under the table for special removals. No board vote, no paper trail, just your signature. Margaret stumbles back. Then there's the fine money. I continue. Thousands of dollars collected from homeowners, but the payments don't match up with the HOA's official accounts. So tell me, Margaret, where's the extra money going? She freezes. I lean in. I already sent everything to the state attorney general. Margaret gasps. Her face drains of color, her mouth working, but no words coming out. The haughty, condescending woman who tried to humiliate me now looks like a cornered rat. And I enjoy every second of it. Margaret's fingers twitch around her teacup, knuckles white. For the first time, she isn't the one speaking. She isn't in control. I let the silence linger. Let her squirm. Then she lashes out. This is absurd, she hisses. You're twisting things to fit some ridiculous narrative. The HOA has every right to steal from homeowners? I cut in smoothly. To destroy private property? To target certain residents and force them out. Her lips part, but no words come. She knows I'm right. But Margaret Kensington doesn't go down without a fight. She straightens, regaining her composure. I have nothing to hide, she declares. lifting her chin. And I have the full support of this community. People like you, she pauses just a second too long, are always looking for ways to stir up trouble. But Brookstone Estates stands behind its leadership. I suppress a smile. She's desperate. I turn, facing the street. Do they? Because while she was busy trying to gaslight me into submission, I made sure the entire neighborhood was watching. Homeowners have gathered on sidewalks, porches, driveways. Mrs. Patel is there, arms crossed, watching with keen interest. The Johnsons, an elderly black couple who have lived here for years, nod knowingly. Even the newer families, people who don't usually get involved in HOA drama, are out listening. And then there's Mike Hernandez. Mike, a former Marine, has lived here for a decade. His property was suspiciously fined last year for a non-compliant fence. And now, he stands front and center, arms folded, glaring at Margaret. I raise my voice just enough. So, Margaret, are you saying the missing funds, the unauthorized fees, the deleted emails, none of that happened? Of course not, she snaps. This is a witch hunt.
I pull out my phone one more time.
And hit play. Margaret's own voice spills into the air.
Clear as day.
You're not exactly the typical homeowner in Brookstone Estates. Maybe this neighborhood just isn't the right fit for you. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Margaret pales. Someone mutters, "Oh my God." A woman near the curb whispers, "Did she really say that?" And then, the final blow. A new voice cuts through the tension. Firm, authoritative. Is there a problem here? Every head turns as Officer Bailey, a uniformed police officer and fellow homeowner, steps forward. I called him earlier, sent him everything. Bailey eyes Margaret. Got a call about some fraudulent HOA activity. He pulls out a notepad. Care to explain why official community funds don't match your financial reports? Margaret stumbles back. This is a misunderstanding. Bailey holds up a printed email thread. You deleted a resident's official complaint. That's tampering with records. And given what we've seen, I think it's time we take a closer look at HOA finances. Margaret loses it. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. Bailey gives her a cool look. Not anymore. Margaret turns wildly, looking for support. But the homeowners? Silent. Watching. The same neighbors she ruled over with an iron fist now stand back, letting her crumble. She realizes it. And I watch the moment her world collapses. Margaret stands frozen, the weight of her downfall pressing down on her like an avalanche. Gone is the smug, untouchable HOA tyrant. What's left is a cornered woman grasping at straws. I need to speak to my lawyer, she stammers. Bailey doesn't blink. You'll have your chance. He nods toward the two uniformed officers now stepping onto the curb. But right now, you need to come with us. Margaret flinches as they move in, their presence a stark contrast to the unchecked power she once held.
Wait. No.
You can't.
Click.
The unmistakable sound of handcuffs locking into place. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Some neighbors pull out their phones, capturing the moment. The same woman who fined people into submission, erased complaints, and wielded the HOA like a weapon now being led toward the patrol car like a common criminal. Margaret thrashes. This isn't fair. This is my community. I built this place. Officer Bailey shakes his head. No, Margaret. You exploited it. She screams, her voice breaking. But the doors slam shut, muffling her words. And just like that, her reign is over. Reclaiming peace. The silence that follows is thick, heavy. Then, slowly, people start to react. A woman near the sidewalk, one of Margaret's former allies, whispers, I didn't know she was doing all that. Mike Hernandez lets out a bitter laugh. You didn't want to know. The Johnsons, the elderly black couple who had lived under Margaret's rule for years, exchange a glance. Mrs. Johnson finally speaks, her voice steady. We've been telling y'all. Nobody listened. Shame flickers across faces. A few people shuffle awkwardly. But there's no denying the truth now. I exhale, finally allowing myself to feel it, the weight lifting. Justice served. I turn, heading back toward my house. My home. No more fines. No more harassment. No more battles just to exist here. Just peace. But just before I reach my porch, I hear a voice. Daniel. I glance back.
Mike.
He hesitates, then nods. Thanks, man. For standing up. For all of us. A few others murmur agreements. Some nod. Others just look away, guilt still settling in. I don't need their apologies. I don't need their gratitude. I just needed them to see. I give Mike a nod. Then, without another word, I step inside, letting the door close behind me. Brookstone Estates will never be the same.